So everybody, welcome to the webinar. This is a webinar presented by Balboa Solutions. This session is going to be recorded, as you just heard, and we will be sending it out to all of the registrants and anybody who joins, so you can have that. We'll be using this for some social media posts as well, so you might see that on LinkedIn and other places. So please take a moment if you are just joining now to introduce yourself in chat, put where you're from. That's what the question we're asking this time. And if you have any questions, please put them in that chat. We will keep that open and do our best to get to any questions that you may have throughout the session. Awesome. Now, today we're going to be having this webinar with Annie Schneider, and we're going to be talking about, as you know from the title, adult learning theory. So we're going to give a brief introduction for Annie. So I will let you introduce yourself, where you're from, where you're working at right now, just everything.
Thanks, Pete. My name is Annie Schneider. Brief background into me. I work at Imagine Learning, and I've been here too many years to count. I want to say maybe 19 years now. But I came from the classroom. I am a trained educator. I've got my master's degree in early childhood education. But when I joined this company, my love of adult learning really kicked in because I got to see the other side of the classroom. I got to see what teachers were doing. So yeah, it's just a little bit about me and where I came from.
Awesome. And two quick questions. One, where did you get your master's degree?
It was from a school in Cincinnati, Ohio, Mount St. Joseph.
Nice. Okay. I thought you're in Arizona. I got my degree at Arizona State, so I was wondering if you were an alumni there as well.
No, I came over from the Midwest to get out of the cold.
Oh, completely understand. Now, if you could give a brief introduction on what Imagine Learning is, like the whole company.
Sure. So Imagine Learning is a company that provides curriculum to K-12 schools and districts. Most of them are in the States, but we do have some schools and districts overseas. But yeah, we provide all kinds of solutions, print and digital, to kids in K-12. And our goal is to empower those kids to succeed in ways that they can't in traditional classrooms.
And are you only located, is the company only located in the United States? Are you in
No, we
Canada as
do.
well?
Yeah, so we are a company of acquisition. So we've acquired companies overseas. So we've got some in England, we've got some in Ireland.
Nice.
And at this point, we've got employees kind of all over the place.
So it seems like you have resources for students, but are those also for teachers as well? Do you have resources there?
Yes, so our platform serves both. So whatever the students encounter in our products, the teachers have access to, and then they can go in and do all of the things that they would do in a regular classroom. They can grade, they can provide feedback, they can help students. So we kind of run the gamut there for any of your curriculum needs in the classroom.
Amazing. And it's all K through 12.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so another question for you is you are in the product section, correct, of all of this? I'm sure you're only on the digital side. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, my team mostly deals with the digital side of the business. Yes.
Okay. Now, with that, I want to get so obviously Balboa Solutions deals a lot with customer behavior and understanding that customer behavior. And I want to get your input on why that's important for your business and understanding customer behavior.
Yeah, so for us, we have different solutions for different needs in the classroom. So some classroom teachers need help with, say, credit recovery. They've got kids that are, starting to not make progress in their regular classes. They're starting to slip and they need to get back on track in order to gain those credits, mostly for graduation. Those customer needs are going to be very different than somebody who is looking for, say, a supplemental solution. They're responsible for the main portion of the teaching, but they need additional resources for practice or remediation.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, customer behavior is really important to monitor and to understand what those different customers need, because the solution is not going to be the same for all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how I've seen a lot of companies that are tracking customer behavior that understand what they're doing throughout the entire session that they are in the product. How do you figure out which one of those behaviors are the most important or bring the most value to the customer?
Yeah, so we work really closely with our product team and our research team to identify what would be those core um, tasks or things that they're doing every day, just depending on, again, their different needs, but also the different roles of our users. So we have not only students and teachers using our products, but we also have, administrators who are in there looking at, they want to see the efficacy of what they've invested in. They want to see the reports. So we work closely with those folks to identify the key tasks that those users would need to be doing. And that's how we identify, are they exhibiting good customer behavior, or do they need some help along the way? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
That is amazing. Sorry, I apologize. I've seen that done by role all the time, and that seems to be extremely successful with a lot of businesses I've worked in. Do you ever create those flow charts with each role to say like how they're using the application on a regular
Yeah.
basis?
Yeah, so we do utilize the paths and the funnels inside of Pendo to see like what is the common path for these different user roles, and then we can see where people kind of deviate. And then we can dig into that with additional research about like why would this particular group of people be deviating from the norm.
Yeah. And you just answered my next question, which I was going to ask how you're tracking these things, and it seems like you're using Pendo. Are you enjoying that application?
I love it.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I've personally been working with it for a long time, so I do enjoy that. There's a lot of other user behavior tools as well, but Pendo seems to be, at least in my opinion, one of the best out there. So I love that.
Yeah, the analytics are really, really rich inside of Pendo,
Hmm.
and there's a lot to dig into, and it takes time. But once you get to a point where you understand what's coming in, it really does open the door for how you can help enable your customers to find the most value out of the product.
Yeah, there can be a learning curve, but it's
Yeah.
very useful. Very much enjoy it. Well, you were telling me earlier about adult learning theory. And so
Mhm.
that is what this is about. And we're going to be giving a definition of what that is. And I want to get, if you have a definition, you have one as well. And I know that you have a presentation that you wanted to give on this as well.
Yeah, and I'll go into the definition as I get into the presentation.
Yeah, perfect. How about we bring that up and we can start with
Okay.
that and talk about the adult learning theory. And while she's getting that up, remember we do have the ability to ask questions in chat. I'll pause if we have any questions that we need to ask. So please, if you have any, put those in chat.
Okay. So for those of you who joined late, I'm Annie. It's a pleasure to be here today. Just as a review, I work at Imagine Learning. We provide curriculum solutions for K-12 schools and districts. And today, like you said, we're going to explore how our Imagine Learning team's dedicated Pendo team applies adult learning theory so that we can design really exceptional in-app experiences for our users. Most of what you're going to see today and hear today is focused on our educator portion of our customer base. But whether you're in tech or you're in education or really any field that trains professionals, my hope today is that after hearing some more about and learning more about adult learning theory, it'll help you create more effective in-app learning experiences for your users. So let's dig into what adult learning theory is. So Malcolm Knowles had some groundbreaking work in adult learning theory. So some of you may have heard the word pedagogy in terms of students. So while pedagogy focuses on child learning, andragogy is the science of adult education. And what Knowles really understood so well was that in comparison to what we know about pedagogy and how students learn, he found that adults do learn differently than children. As adults, we bring our experiences, we're looking for practical solutions, we want control over our learning paths. Now, current research is showing that some of this is now also applying to pedagogy too. But when you think about adult learning theory, even today, the research is really rooted in what Malcolm Knowles did back in the 80s and 90s. So I'm going to start with his 3 assumptions about how adults learn. because that'll get you a good starting point. So his first assumption is that adults evolve from dependent learners to self-directed partners. So imagine, if you will, students in the classroom who typically follow a set curricula versus we as professionals choosing skill building paths for growth in our field. So you can think of adult learning theory kind of like GPS navigation. We're choosing our destination and goals, but we may need timely guidance, maybe in the form of in-app resources, when we encounter roadblocks. So that was his first assumption. His second assumption is that adults filter all the new information through prior experiences. So consider for a moment, you're on a website and there's a pop-up help screen. So some of you may say, this is great. This appeared exactly when I needed it. It's exactly what I wanted. Others may have a negative experience. Man, this just totally derailed my workflow. I was in here to do something important. Now I forget what I was here to do, or now I got to dismiss this thing. So the adult brain is kind of like a suitcase. So all of your past experiences are already kind of packed away nice and neatly. As you learn something new, it's like trying to add another item to that suitcase. And some of that is based on your prior experiences and whether they were positive or negative. So as you encounter things in the future, if it fits well and you had a positive experience with it, you may immediately recognize its value and you try and find a place in your suitcase for it. But if it doesn't fit or it feels irrelevant, you might completely reject it outright, even if it could be useful later. So we have to think about those prior experiences that adults have when we're thinking about how we're going to train them to use products. We want them to prioritize putting those things in their suitcase, which means they have to have positive experiences with it. So that's another assumption that he had. And his third assumption held that adults engage with learning when they're solving real world challenges that are both relevant and timely. So we can test this real quick. Like, let's say I decide to teach you how to bake a cake right now. So some of you might be like, great, I'm baking a birthday cake tomorrow night. This is perfect. But for most of you, it's probably not relevant. You know, I'm going to forget this next month. I'm never planning to bake a cake, or I'm nowhere near my oven right now. So training your users on skills that they have no use for right now is like trying to teach cake baking to someone whose oven is getting delivered in a few weeks. So for Knowles, he found that timing and practicality very much matter to adults when we're talking about how they learn.
Annie, I got a quick comment on this.
Sure.
This is really similar to something I learned in college, the cognitive dissonance theory. And it's similar in a lot of ways to where if something is far enough away from a person's uh, perceived experiences and how they see the world, then they will project it outright. So it's interesting to see it here. And I'm also curious, how did you go about learning about this?
So when I started with the company, I was in charge of creating curriculum for the students. And as my journey in this company progressed, I moved quickly into helping the adults learn how to use our products. And as I started into that path, I started doing research on how do adults learn. So some of this came up in my master's program, but because my master's program was really centered on early childhood education before they get to school, it wasn't really a key point of my learning, and I just found it fascinating. So I started doing my own research.
That is amazing. I have a lot of questions at the end of this of your presentation about how you use this when you're looking at your students as well as the adults that use your product. So I'll ask that later. I want you to keep going
Okay,
though.
perfect. All right, so he took those assumptions and then created 6 guiding principles that, when followed, have been shown to produce really positive and successful learning with adult learners. You can kind of consider these the ingredients, if you will, for effective adult learning. So we'll go through each one of these. So number 1 is purpose. Adults need to know why, and they need to have context for learning. Number 2 is autonomy. They also need to have some choice in their learning journey. 3 is experience. Their learning journey continues to be built on those prior experiences that help them guide their path forward. Number 4 is relevance. So they're more likely and ready to learn when it solves today's problem. Number 5 is problem centric. So adults learn best when they're solving real world problems, and it's helping them become more efficient or more effective in what they're doing. And then number 6 is internal motivation. So Knowles found that, like, unlike children who tend to thrive on external motivations like awards or stickers or points or positive affirmations, adults tended to thrive and learn best when their motivation is activated internally, so tapping into their personal growth. But current research, you got to remember, Knowles was in the 80s and 90s. Current research about adult learning theory is very much rooted in this research, but it's also showing that there was a big impact with digital technology that wasn't around when Knowles was doing his research. So what they're finding now is some adults can actually be motivated highly externally with things like gamification or social recognition. And also it's important to remember that what wasn't prevalent for Knowles was the ease and access to data and analytics that we have today that does allow for more personalized learning content. But that's really what makes Pendo so great for all of this, because we can do that in Pendo.
Yeah, and I got a quick question. Are these in any particular order? Would you say that some of these are more important than others?
Um, I wouldn't say any are more important than others, because the learning experience is the learning experience as a whole.
Hmm.
So it's not like as an adult, if it's not relevant to me, I can still consume it. Like if it's not relevant, it's not relevant. I'm not going to consume it. If I'm not motivated to learn it, I'm not going to learn it. So all of these have their own piece of the pie. I don't think any one of them is more important than the others.
Okay.
Okay, are there any questions in the chat? I'm not looking at the chat, but I just wanted to check in.
I am keeping an eye on that. There's no questions at the moment, but it's a good reminder to everybody to ask any questions. This is a lot of really good information, and so it's some deep topics.
Yeah, so that's high level, really quick background into adult learning theory. So now I want you to take a look at what one of my team's projects was and how it evolved as we began to apply these theories in practice. So when my team first set out to create an onboarding experience in our product, this one particular product, we worked really closely with our training team, our support and customer experience teams, and our technical writers to better understand the processes that they were using to explain to customers how to use our product. Because our main goal with providing in-app onboarding and help, other than keeping our customers in the product, was to maintain that consistency with all the other help resources. So you all probably don't know much, if anything, about Imagine Learning products. So if I explained our onboarding approach using our products, that definitely wouldn't be relevant to you all. And I'd probably lose some of you to multitasking. And that would be a really poor example of using adult learning theory and all of the principles we just talked about. So I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is show you show you our approach, but instead I'm going to demo how we did that using Pendo as the backdrop, which is relevant to all of us. That's why we're here. So as I mentioned, I knew we wanted to keep the in-app experience and the learning guides consistent between our live trainings and our asynchronous knowledge base that we maintain. So both of those teams presented getting to know our product and learning about our product in a 30, 60, 90-day roadmap, similar to what you see here. And so we wanted to make sure that we were kind of following that same approach. With that approach, we were able to incorporate some of the important principles of adult learning theory. So you can see here, the need to know. So we provided the importance of completing these tasks in the description of the guide. Self-concept, they were responsible for their learning paths that they chose. They didn't have to complete all of them. We showed them which ones they did complete. They didn't have to complete them before moving on either. So they could do one in the 30-day if they needed. They could do one in the 60-day if they wanted to. So we're really meeting them wherever they are in their product learning journey. There's the orientation to learning. So these were all tasks that, when completed, we knew would lead to a more successful implementation of our products. Rather than being subject-centered information, right? So we wanted to make sure that whatever tasks we're putting in front of them are tasks that are going to make them more efficient and more effective in their classrooms. And then we also have experiences, right? So again, trying to create that parity with the other ways that we're training, the customers who had worked with live trainers, or someone who contacts our support staff, or somebody who previously explored our help center. This approach gave them that consistent experience about learning in our product. So that was our first approach. But a key piece of the adult learning theory that we were missing in this approach was that concept of readiness to learn. So going back, adults learn best when it's relevant or when they need to know something. And the problem with this solution, although it checked a lot of adult learning theory boxes, was that when we released it, it appeared for all of our educators. And not all of them needed it at the time it was released. So what we saw was some veteran educators just saw the first 30 days and I don't need that. They didn't even bother to click into the 60 or 90 days to find information that could be useful. And we did make it available to launch at any time. Like if they dismissed it, they could launch it again from the resource center. But we were up against that concept of like out of sight, out of mind. And so that led to very low visibility on the guides, lower engagement, and not just lower engagement with the guides, but also with our product usage. So as a team, we revisited this project, which, full transparency, was really tough for us. We had built over 100 assets between tours, informational callouts, announcements, reminders. We had a lot of stuff that we built in Pendo to support that first onboarding launch. But what we came up with has proven to be more successful for our customers and very much worth the time to revise. So I'm going to dig into how we did that here. So in our revisions, instead of having a big guide of guides that pops up in your face, we created guides that are always anchored to the side of the browser window. So in our product, in this particular product, we were lucky that our devs gave us a nice little margin along the side, so it doesn't interfere with any product functionality. I should also mention that this solution does require some custom code blocks, so it's not something you can do directly out of the box with Pendo, but the custom code was pretty easy to figure out. But this allows us to have these guides kind of anchored to the page. So instead of having our customers try and figure out which tour they might need at what point, because it was just popped up on the homepage, we moved these tours to be contextually located throughout our product on each page that we wanted to introduce to new customers. So at any point, if you land on a page that you're not familiar with and you need help, just click this little quick tips button and the guide slides out onto the screen. In addition to making these now contextual and relevant, we also added information to help them figure out, is this the right time for me to take this tour? So we give them a description of what they're going to learn, but we also added the time that it was going to take to complete the tour. So now, hopefully, they have all the information they need to decide if they want to continue. And we also tapped into that internal motivation. Like, if I know up front this is only going to take a minute, I'm more likely to engage in that than our previous solution, which just had a list of things to do, but there was no indication of how long it was going to take, where it was going to take me. I was really kind of flying blind with the last solution. With this, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm here, I'm learning about this page. And if they're not ready to go through the tour, they can always click it, it slides back, it's there for them when they want it, and then they can click it again. So when they are ready to take the tour They would just click the button, and now the tour is launched. For us, we made it our policy not to have more than 5 steps on a page. We really do try and keep it to 3 or 4. 5 would be the max, but we give them an overview of the page that they're on. They'll stay on this page. We're not going to send them to other pages, so it keeps it contextual right where they are. It keeps it relevant to where they are. And then we also included the benefits in the text of the things that we're calling out. So again, hitting a lot of those concepts of adult learning theory.
Really quick, Annie. So
Yeah,
two things. One, I would love to steal that custom code that you have because I would love to use this in various other clients that I am working with. So I'll ask you that after. Maybe we
sure.
can even share that with the people that are coming to this if they want to see that. And then there is a question from Paige of if you did any work to introduce users to this style of contextual help, or did you decide to let users discover this type of help organically?
That's a great question, Paige. Whenever we do something new with Pendo that's out of the norm for our customers, we always pop up a little tooltip to just bring attention to it. But this solution, because it's anchored to the side of the page, which was something new for them anyway, kind of grabbed their attention if they wanted to explore it. So we did do tooltips to introduce it, but it was just one. We didn't do it on every page. If they saw it and then dismissed it, it was gone. So,
Awesome.
okay, so talking about the theory behind our actual guides. So we included the benefits of why the task, what the thing is that we're calling out is so important, because that brings in the internal motivation principle of adult learning theory. So as an adult, I don't want to just complete tasks. I want to understand how and why completing that task is going to make my life easier or make my job more efficient. And that's going to help me internalize the task more easily so that I can repeat it in the future. So our users, who are mostly teachers, especially want that because their time is so precious in the classroom. They can't afford to be spending hours learning the product. They need that quick information, and they need to know why, so that if I'm going to take the time to tell them about something, it has to have importance to them and it has to make their job more efficient. In this example, like, we know adults bring with them plenty of experiences with filters on web pages. So some web pages have great filters, some don't. But for us, if using filters can help them be more effective and more efficient, that's what they need to know. We don't need to teach them how to apply the filter, but rather, why should they even apply filters at all? So this is just one example. This is how we called out the filters in our products. We didn't tell them, oh, go set the filter. We told them about all the different ways they could filter that could make looking at data for their class even more efficient. So something to think about as you're doing in-app onboarding is some customers may not be familiar with certain icons that your product uses. So it's always good practice to point out icons that might not be clear or may have multiple meanings across various websites. And again, including the benefit of why they would even click the icon in the first place. I didn't know what this icon was in Pendo until I clicked it. But once I clicked it, I'm like, man, this is so helpful because I can rearrange my columns, I can see the important data, and I can then take action on that data. It made my life way more efficient. And I probably wouldn't have clicked that icon if I didn't see it. So it's good to call those things out that you know are going to make your customers' experiences easier.
And specifically also features below the fold of the application. Those ones are sometimes really hard for people to notice because they're not always scrolling down. And so I've noticed that as something that would be very useful for this.
Very true. One of the things that you may hear people say related to adult learning is this: tell, teach, tell. So you tell them what you're going to teach, you teach them, and then you tell them what you just taught them. We do this with kids too. This is a good example. This, what you see on screen, is a good example of how we circled back around to what they needed to know and why they started the tour in the first place. So they had the first pop out. We're telling them what they're going to learn. We taught them, and now we revisit that. We tell them what they just learned. And that can also help boost that internal motivation. Like, yay, I just finished this. I learned something new. I can file that away in my suitcase. Now I can do this again and again and again, and it's going to make my life easier. Um, you may not have noticed, but the way that we built the tour was to use faint backdrops throughout. You didn't see any way for them to click out of the tour. There were no X's on the guides. The only close button you saw was at the very end. And all of that was on purpose because this is custom code and because we wanted this quick tips to be available at all times for our customers, just kind of off to the side, not in their way. We needed a way to launch the slide guide again. So that close button not only closes the pop-up that you saw, but it also relaunches the quick tip. So it's always constantly available. That was a challenge with our first approach was we had this pop-up guide, and then once they dismiss it, it's gone. And we had to find a place to house it, which at the time we put in the resource center. So this solved that problem of out of sight, out of mind. Now it's still there. It's there if they need it, but it's off to the side. It doesn't interrupt their workflow. They can engage with it at any time. But also for us, for our customers, remember, we're working with schools and districts, and they have natural cycles where they come in at the beginning of the school year, they leave at the end of the school year for summer break. They now have, 2 or 3 months break, and now they're coming back to the product. We wanted to make sure that these guides were still available when they came back, because not all of our pages are used every day. We needed a way for them to have that refresher if they come back, but it also allows us to be more nimble with the onboarding. So if we make changes to a page that's going to make them more efficient or more effective, which hopefully all of your changes to your products are with that goal in mind, we are able to easily adapt the tours and add and remove content that's no longer needed. So this approach definitely for us, building guides was way easier to manage than what we had built prior.
Now, do you have a quick tips feature like this on every page, or is it only on certain pages?
It's almost every page. And we did that because we knew we were going to have brand new users who had never experienced the product. It kind of allows them to freely explore the product, and then they get to something and like, I'm not quite sure about what I'm supposed to be doing here. Again, because we're working with students and teachers, some of our reports don't have any data until the students do work. So if you go to a page that has that is where we're pointing out features of the report and there's no data there, they can launch the tour, but we will interrupt the tour and say, hey, this is not the right time. You need to come back after your students have done some work. And we do that in a really nice way, but we let them know this is not the right time for this tour for you. Come back and you can relaunch it again. But it is on most of our pages that we wanted to call out certain things that we knew were going to make the teachers more effective.
Yeah, so I have a question, and then we have another question in chat, and I'm sure you might have something about this, but what was the success of doing it like this compared to what you did it before?
Oh,
And then I'm
I
going to ask,
have, yeah,
oh,
I have a
you have
whole
slides?
section on data
Okay.
analysis.
So let me ask the other question, because you might actually have something for this as well, and it's similar. But in your guide metrics, do you see a lot of repeat views? Curious if given this would support your strategy. So wondering if you're seeing
We
people click this more than once.
We do see repeat views for a number of reasons. Some people go to a page and then they leave and then they don't get to that page. Like our admins aren't in there very frequently, so they may go revisit it. Some of our teachers are actually responsible for training other teachers on site, so they'll go through these sessions by themselves and then they'll use those to go through and teach other people. So we do see repeat views on these.
Amazing. Okay, I'm gonna let's keep going. We have about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that you can get through those slides.
I'll get through them. Okay, so I've alluded to the fact that our original plan for onboarding didn't really turn out as successful as it could be, and as successful as we had hoped. We put a lot into that project, and we were really hoping for better results. But this new approach, we were able to look at some data, and it really did help us reimagine our approach to product onboarding, not just for this product, but for other products too. So let me dig into the data. So you may or may not be familiar with the main data in Pendo. Stickiness is one that we really focus on. In order to measure stickiness, what we did was we created a couple of segments. One that would divide our users into users who had never started any of the onboarding tours. And then we can compare them to those who started at least one of these onboarding tours. So we're going to look at stickiness, or the average percentage of high frequency return visitors. And I should mention that for this particular product in our portfolio, we don't actually expect the users to log in daily. I know that seems weird for teachers, but this was one of those supplemental products that it's not required that they use it daily. So instead of looking at the daily users over weekly or daily over monthly, we looked at the weekly over monthly, which again, it's why Pendo is so great, because you can look at different metrics depending on your use case. So in this first chart are the users who never started any of our onboarding tours. And you can see some natural dips around the holidays and schools. It's common for us working with students and teachers. They get the winter breaks, they get the fall breaks. And the stickiness for those users is about 40 to 50%. It's not bad. It's not what we were hoping for. But when you compare that to people who started at least one of our onboarding tours, you can see that stickiness jumps up. And from this, we can hypothesize that those who are engaging with onboarding are getting the help that they need at a time when they need it. So it's making it relevant. They don't have to leave. They don't have to call someone for help. It takes less than a minute of their day to get a better understanding of our product. So we can hypothesize that they can see and experience the value when it's relevant to them, and they're coming back for it throughout the month, which is great. So that's stickiness. We looked at visitor frequency. In Pendo, they denote frequency in variations of teal colors. So you'll see a light teal, a medium teal, and a dark teal. Generally speaking, you're hoping for a lot of medium and dark teal. You want those visitors to frequently come back. That's why you built the product. That's why it's there. So when we go and look at the people who never started onboarding, you see a pretty large group of light teal on this graph, which isn't quite ideal for us. It's about 70% of our users that aren't engaging with onboarding. They're active less than or equal to 4 days of the month. Now, we do know some of our population does fall into that. We're never going to change that. A lot of our admins don't log in that frequently throughout the month, and we know that. But the majority of these people are teachers, and we should see that number higher. So when we compare that to people who started at least one of our onboarding tours, we see some great data here. You can see the percentage of low return users drops down to below 50%. So the high frequency return users grew a bit too. So you see the medium and the dark. And so again, more frequent returns hopefully means that they're finding value and they're coming back for it frequently throughout the month and for more of it. We also can look at individual tours. So this particular solution, we have multiple pages. I think we ended up with like 13 to 15 tours. This is just one tour. And another way to look at our data was to compare the two main user roles, our teachers versus admins, to see which tours resonate most with each user group. So this is just an example. The dark teal bars that you see here are representative of our admin staff. And you can see in September and the beginning of October, this particular tour seemed to be really popular with admins. Now, switching over to the pink, these pink bars represent our teachers. But you'll notice it's kind of pretty consistent. They're engaging with it throughout the year. But what's really interesting is when you look at this data side by side, right? So now we can see our admins right next to our teachers. And we can see that the admins are generally engaging with this tour more frequently than our teachers throughout the first quarter. So this can allow us to dig into adult learning theory a bit more and perhaps work with user research to uncover new information. So we can ask questions like, why are admins engaging with this tour more frequently? Should teachers be going through this tour? And if so, why? And how do we get them to see that value? We could also ask something like, is there something about the time of year that makes this tour more effective? Should we add a reminder call out during that time of year for users who haven't engaged with it? So even the data that we have is leading to further data analysis that we need to do, but it's providing a wealth of data.
So I think this actually, I think you just answered a question that's in chat of, do you iterate on your guides or guide order based on what you see in workflows and paths and funnels to
Yes.
do what's most successful? And then the other question is also, have you experimented with different tones or personalizing these guides to see what impact it has?
We haven't experimented with tone. We try and keep our tone consistent between in-app and our asynchronous help center and our live training. We try and keep that tone consistent. What we will play with is our user groups, and we may show different content to admins than we do to teachers because they're in there for a different purpose. So we will play around with that.
Okay.
The last metric I'm going to go through is retention. So you're seeing here a higher rate of retention for our users who engage with our new onboarding. That's the top pinkish line versus those who didn't engage with any onboarding throughout the school year. That's the bottom purple line. And this is just related to the new approach, but I'm going to compare that to our old approach, which is that teal line down at the bottom. So you can clearly see the impact that providing timely, relevant, contextual help for our customers with this new experience has on their retention. So it was a lot of work for us to create both of these methods, but hopefully you see continuing to review your data and thinking about your customer learning journey in terms of adult learning theory is a pretty invaluable practice.
This is amazing. I love this story.
Yay!
And you ended at a perfect time. We have about a minute left, and there is a question that I wanted to bring up from Paige. I'm curious if you've had any pushback from product teams about making release content contextual. As I'm sure you've experienced, it's often a battle to fight others' desire to auto pop in these scenarios with releases.
Great question, Paige. So my Pendo team has spent a lot of time forging relationships with our product teams. And it started when we took Pendo away from them and put it in the hands of a centralized Pendo team who is responsible for all of the guides that get built across our entire organization. So our product team doesn't actually have permission to build guides. It's all done by my team. But in order to get to that point, we had to do a lot of work building and forging relationships and building trust in my team. And the way that we did that was working with our product team members as partners, not as stakeholders. So they were part of this entire process. We didn't go into this saying, this is what we're going to do. We presented it to the product team and said, what do you think about this kind of approach? Can we try it? And we tried it on one page and we got a lot of positive interactions with it. And that's when our product leader said, yeah, go do it for the whole product. So.
No, I think that's great. When you have pushback, what I have found to be successful is exactly what you did, doing a trial. Say, look, we don't have to make this set in stone. We can try it out. We can even try it out with a certain percentage of customers and see if it works the way we expect. If it doesn't, then it's fine. We can move on and try something else. But if it does work, we have some evidence to get the people who are giving us that pushback, the evidence that they need to be okay with it.
Yeah.
We are unfortunately out of time. I feel like we could have talked about this for hours, Annie. This was amazing. I will be sending this recording out to all the participants and anybody who registered. If you have any other questions, please email us. This has been a webinar by Balboa Solutions. We help with a lot of this user behavior as well as Pendo solutioning with companies. Thank you so much, Annie, for joining us and everybody who joined the webinar. We will be sending this out later today.
Thanks so much for having me, Keith. I appreciate it.
It was great. Thanks again, everybody. See you in the next one.